So I'm sure all of you noticed that this week we marked Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, and then the next day, Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, which means for much of the Jewish world, our attention has been focused on the land of Israel. And it has certainly occupied a great deal of my thought this week. And I thought it might be interesting to reflect together on Israel. And I want to use as our jumping off point this passage written by Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory, who was the chief rabbi of England until his death. And he wrote, this is from a piece he wrote called Future Tense. So let me give it out and... So Rabbi Sacks writes, at the heart of Judaism is a mystery, or more precisely, a proposition that successive generations have found it hard to understand. Why Israel? Why does the Hebrew Bible so resolutely and unerringly focus on this place, what Spinoza called a mere strip of territory? The God of Abraham is the God of the whole world, a God unbounded by space. Why then does God choose any particular space, let alone one so small and apparently unprepossessing? In exile, God might still live in the hearts of Jews, but not in the public square, in the justice of the courts, the morality of the economy, and the humanitarianism of everyday life. Why this land? Why there? The Bible really doesn't say. We can only speculate. But implicit in the biblical narrative is the answer. Israel is a place from which it is impossible to build an empire. The geography is wrong. The Judean hills in one direction, the Sinai desert in the other, block easy access to the surrounding lands. The coastal plain is narrow and in ancient times open to easy attack from the sea. Israel is a place where people look up to heaven in search of rain, not down to earth and its natural supply of water. It is a place where you have to pray, not one in which nature and its seasons are predictable. This is part of a larger narrative. Because the terrain of Israel is such that it cannot become the base of an empire, it will constantly be a threat from larger and stronger neighboring powers. Israel will always find itself outnumbered. It will need to rely on exceptional courage from its soldiers and ingenuity in battle. That will take high national morale, which in turn will require from the people a sense of belonging to a just and inclusive society. Commitment will be needed from every individual. They will need to feel that their cause is justified and that they are fighting for something worth preserving. So the entire configuration of the Torah's social ethics, whose guardians were the prophets, is already implicit in the king of geopolitical entity Israel is and will be. It would always be a small and highly vulnerable country set in a strategic location at the junction of three continents, Europe, Africa, and Asia. So we've read what Sacks had to say. I'm curious how you react to his to this excerpt from a larger piece. Yes, it does speak to the improbability of Israel as a nation state, not once, not twice, but now for the third time. The other thoughts, reactions? Right. Yes, it does suggest that without divine participation, this may not happen or cannot happen. Good. Put some flowers in the window, you make it pretty, you put some curtains. But yes, you're right. It's like, no, you don't get prime real estate. You literally get the lowest place on earth measured against sea level, right? Remember, the Dead Sea is in fact the lowest point on earth relative to sea level. So not only is it little and tiny and kind of oddly done, but it's low. Other thoughts? So I will tell you part of why I was particularly struck by this passage this week. I was thinking about what he describes here about what is, he describes a certain reality of Israel as always being outnumbered. After all, when you think of the history of the Jewish people, it's the history of the Assyrians coming from the north, Trump, 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 the Babylonians coming from the north, the Egyptians coming up from the south, right? And basically, much of the time, Israel was the corridor through which armies went against each other, right? Egypt was constantly fighting the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and vice versa. When Alexander the Great's empire splits, you got the Seleucids positioned in what is now Syria, and you've got the Ptolemies sitting in Egypt, and they don't get along so good. And who's in the middle? Israel. And this remains true throughout history, right? So on one level, he's capturing a reality that has been true for millennia, but it struck me particularly as he writes, Israel will always find itself outnumbered. It will need to rely on exceptional courage from its soldiers and ingenuity in battle. And part of me is going like, this is the Six-Day War in that one sentence. This is the Yom Kippur War, where the fate of the country and the fate of the battle is flipped by the boldness, the audacity, and the courage of Israel's soldiers. And then he goes on. They will need to feel that their cause is justified and that they are fighting for something worth preserving. And I'm thinking, this is at the crux of the problem of Israel today. If that sense of unity of purpose that drove the armies of Israel in the Six-Day War and in the Yom Kippur War and in wars of defense in between, this is the thing that is disintegrating. The number of soldiers being called up for reserve duty who are refusing to go has hit numbers never, ever seen in the history of the state. A number of people protesting in the streets, while it's not quite at the point that it was before October 7th, but there are thousands and thousands of people protesting in the streets of Israel day after day, week after week. And so they're asking the same question in some ways that Sachs put forth here. Why Israel? What does it mean to be an Israel today? And that sense of common purpose, that sense of unity that I think Sachs captures accurately as being an essential part of the experience and the survival of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, is never been more undermined. He talks about the need for a high national morale and a sense of belonging to a just, inclusive society, and one that needs the commitment from every individual. And increasingly, there seems to be this disconnect between the government and the people. And so this year, as we observed Yom HaZikaron, I thought about how many families are observing it for the first time because they lost family members in Gaza. And I'm thinking about it as we celebrate, and the celebration was muted both by the shadow of this ongoing conflict in Gaza and by the proliferation of fires that limited the physical ability to celebrate. I have never been more worried than I am today that the thing that binds us together, the thing that binds people together in the state of Israel, is fraying. And I worry what Yom HaAtzmaut a year from now and 5 years from now will look like. And what we will answer the question of why. Why does it matter that this is where we are? And my fear is far too many might say, maybe it doesn't. That scares me more than anything else. So, something to ponder as we leave the week of Yom HaAtzmaut and we go forward into the next year of Israel's struggles. Averim, I will invite you to turn back to your Sidurim, and on page 56, we rise as able for Aleinu.